Hey, everybody, welcome to EIS Live. Happy 4th of July weekend. I know this is the observed day for the holiday. A lot of people are off, so hopefully you're out there joining us right now. And just want to give you a little information about Emotional Intelligence Solutions in case you don't know who we are. We are a counseling, coaching, and mentoring entity that helps people find the freedom in their lives to become all they're intended to be and discover their why and purpose, as opposed to the classical idea of counseling, like we go to counseling when something's wrong with us and it adds some kind of a stigma that's negative. We really shed a positive light on that in terms of growth and positive change in people's lives. So how do we do that? We do that by employing a process that affords people the opportunity to go far enough into their past and their brokenness, their unhealed traumas and areas in their lives that really prevent them from moving into the healthy patterns that we're really designed to live in. And that's in relationships, marriages, businesses, any employment setting, really is in terms of the whole person. And again, not just to fix people, but you will have opportunity to become the genuine you. And then we also extend this process into leadership development, as we believe leadership starts from within in the home, in our home life, in our regular relationships, and we carry that outward from there. So it's not just about being a great problem solver or decision maker or developing great techniques in terms of skill sets and things in leading, but really developing a heart to lead and developing a desire to raise others up to be who they're called to be as well, and adopting character, integrity, and accountability and other hallmarks of genuine leadership, and then imparting those to others as well. So we offer a comprehensive approach to personal growth and maturity from the individual all the way to CEOs and businesses and everybody in between. So throughout our broadcast today, you'll see some banners be popping up on the screen intermittently on how to connect with us if you desire to do so. And then as far as our live shows, we're here to feature testimonies of people's lives that have been transformed in many different ways through this process that we just talked about, that are still on the journey, because it's a journey that really lasts a lifetime. And other professionals in the field helping people in similar ways. Other staff members of EIS, who we have two other staff members on our show today, and authors of books that we believe are important resources to help us help other people in the process here at EIS. So before we get started, I want to remind you that you're welcome to ask questions throughout the broadcast. You can post them in the comments, and we're going to do our best to pull them up at the end and have opportunity for us to answer those as best we can. So as we get started today, I want to introduce, and I have to tell you, my media czar is not here today, so I'm pushing all the buttons and pulling all the levers myself. So if something backfires and doesn't work well, that's why. But I'm going to introduce my co-host for today, Anita Aronofsky, who you've met before. Come on, Anita.
Hey, Bill. How are you today?
Hey, how are you doing?
Awesome today. Thankful to be here on your live. Yay.
Hey, the people just can't hold back, you know. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yep.
So you got some storms going on down there in Florida, right?
We sure do. We got some storms going on here. Air conditioning is out. So if the electricity goes out, bear with us. I'll be gone. Yeah.
Well, I always kind of like to point out that you and I and Pepe, your husband Pepe, of course, who's another EIS counselor, we've been friends for 25 or 30 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we go back a long way from being, I guess, probably a mess on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we started out just as casual friends at church. And then we end up getting to be closer friends. Some of our kids are still friends today. I know Rebecca and Vincent still talk back and forth, but Abby was also friends with Rebecca. So we have stories, lots and lots of stories on that. Let's see. We housed some of the urban missionaries for New York City Relief. So we had some interaction with that. Let's see, lots of stuff. Actually, you let Pepe and I stay at the base of New York City Relief one Christmas time when our house was being renovated. Great stories. I won't share them on air. The Peru trip. I mean, there's just so many. I could go on and on. Stephanie had some work training with Pepe for a while, and that was fun to have her there at the office working. So we had a lot of ebbs and flows in our relationship, a lot of our paths just crossing and intertwining in and out. And it's been a great ride, Bill, and I'm happy to be back. I hope that's good for you. I hope you're not locking your door every time you see us.
No, it's awesome how God works, and loving your dailies. Today was an awesome one that I just posted a little while ago, an hour and a half ago, I think. So if anybody's looking and missed your daily today, go look it up, because Anita's just kind of just shuffling them off one by one, 2 or 3 of them a week, I think pretty much is your average now.
Okay.
But I really appreciate the contributions, and Sandy, of course, who's coming up, has added a few as well. But really loving that. Keep it up.
Oh, I love it too. I will.
All right, so let's get on to Sandy Myers, who is our guest today. She's one of our newer counselors as well. Newer, I guess it's probably within the past year. I guess new means within a year or so, something like that. Yeah. With the pandemic, I've kind of lost a lot of time frames in my mind. I can't keep track of things over the past year. But yep, she's a part of the EIS team now, and I just as some bullet points as far as her background and experience. And we're going to be talking about that as well as lots of other things with her, of course, today. But she's got over 20 years of work experience in the areas of leadership, counseling, coaching, and nonprofit organization work. She's got her BA of Pastoral Christian Counseling or Ministries from Oral Roberts University. She's also certified through the NCCA, as most of us are that are on staff here. She's passionate about helping people find personal breakthroughs, so she's a great fit. A strong faith in God led her to overcome challenges in her childhood and teenage years that she's going to be expounding on that a bit today as well. She specializes in helping clients align their lives to truth, self-awareness, and find personal fulfillment in their current roles of influence. You can, if you know a little bit about EIS, you know that this is a perfect fit. Once again, the people who have a heart to do this is what we're looking for. Her parents are originally from the Dominican Republic, and of course, we have a whole team down in the DR that we're working, and Pepe is working towards becoming basically a proprietary counselor for our DR team down there. So we're excited about that too. And so we have another DR representative here, and she resides in Orlando with her husband, Chad, and her 3-year-old daughter, Jenna. And she's going to talk about that too. She's an elder at City of Life Church, and she enjoys teaching classes, participating in community outreach, integrating new volunteers into areas of service. She's got nothing to do, I guess. She's just laying around doing nothing. And she uses her social media to share encouraging content. I'm sure you've seen some of that popping up on the EIS outlets as well. So Sandy brings tons and tons to the table. So let's welcome Sandy Myers. Hey, Sandy.
Hey, Sandy.
So excited to be here.
Welcome.
Oh, yeah, we have a studio audience now. They're right in the other room over here.
Yeah.
They heard me.
They heard you.
Yes. Well, welcome. Of course, we've been talking since last night and today, and now we're making like we haven't talked at all. But we'll see what we can do here.
It'll be good.
But yeah, it's great. It's great to have you here, and I'm just so excited because I love featuring our own counselors, on the show, because people need to, to see who we have here and what your background is, and what was your life like. Because I think a lot of the viewpoints in business and even in EIS is people have a tendency to put people on. I think we do this across the board. We put people on pedestals. Yeah. If people are in a position of authority or leadership or something, we have a tendency to view them as like they have it all together. They never struggled in their lives, and that's one of the reasons why we want to learn from people like that, But the reality is, and I think we do a pretty good job of letting people know how regular we are, and that actually most of us, like we talked about earlier, really have come from a broken background as well. And that's what gets redeemed. That's how God works in our lives. And he actually transforms all of that. What used to be weaknesses and failures turn into our successes and our strengths. And you bring a lot of that to the table. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different facets of your life today. But I thought maybe we'd start with just a little bit of background of you, just so that people can get to know Sandy a little bit.
Sure. like a loaded question, right? There's so many parts. I'll keep
I
it.
time.
No, I know.
Yep.
So I grew up, my parents were originally from the Dominican Republic. So I'm first generation American, which is, you know, awesome. My daughter watches Sesame Street, and I remember watching a recent like little skit that they did of this little boy that was, you know, from two cultures, and it was like English me and Spanish me. And when I saw it, I started crying. I'm like, where was this when I was little? You know, I would have so loved that. But it was a beautiful part growing up within two cultures. So I grew up in New York and New Jersey in the 80s and 90s before, you know, smartphones and the crazy fashion days, you know, the 80s and 90s up there. I have a large family, you know, my mom and dad, great parents, you know, they had dynamics within their marriage, and their marriage did not last, which was impacted all of our lives as a family siblings. Factoid, I'm a twin. So if you, if you ever run into my twin sister, which has happened to both of us, we've gotten like awkward hugs and all of that before, but I am a twin. So we're the eldest of just a large family. I won't even go into the numbers of that. But you know, I grew up with a blended family, you know, kind of speeding through everything, the dynamics of whatever my parents went through. Now they're both good people, you know, flawed, just like myself. And my dad came from a very entrepreneurial family. He taught me a lot of leadership. My mom, she worked really hard. She came from the country and really taught me, like, you know, you are here to help people. And so I felt like I got the best out of both of them. And I'm so grateful for what they were able to impart into our lives, you know. But the breakdown of their marriage really did affect my life, you know, because when your mom and dad are there, there is that sense of security for the most part. And when you start sensing a shift, even I remember I was around 7 years old when I started sensing a shift, and I started not feeling safe. And that kind of changes the role that you play as a kid. Sometimes, you know, you just become either protector or investigator. It just, there were a lot of things that I had to just overcome. As a result of everything that went down with my parents, I had a lot of shame, a lot of sense of abandonment, a lot of feeling like I had to achieve. School was an incredible outlet for me. It was a positive outlet for me. I was able to like apply myself, because school for me was like a pathway out of what I was, you know, going through at home. And two, it was instilled in us to make something of ourselves. So at school, it was our safe place. There was a lot of recognition. There was a lot of acknowledgement. We had good mentors. Even in high school, I got involved in school leadership. I did all the nerdy stuff, you know. But it was also a way to feel connected with something positive and connected with community. So that happened a lot in high school. I learned a lot about, there's like 4 different themes in my life. Definitely learning about my identity was a big deal growing up, because you can feel lost in a family sometimes and trying to figure out who you are. Leadership was something instilled in me from a young age. And the mentoring process was something that I felt like it was a blessing. I had definitely people speak into my life who spoke potential, you know, who pointed out potential in my life when I didn't see it for myself. And learning about temperament. I learned about temperament early on. Like, I think I was in high school when I first started learning it. And I always had an interest, anything to help me figure out myself and figure out how to do life. That was my jam. That was the thing that I wanted to do. And then the whole process that we talk about at EI Solutions, that's something that has followed me my whole life. And I think after I left high school, I moved away to Oklahoma, as far away as possible from home, to have my own life, independence, and all of that. And it was there in college that I grew. I went through a healing process, and I had mentors who would point things out and notice certain defense mechanisms that I had and called certain things out. So yeah, for the most part, like, all those 4 areas, those things have followed me my whole life. But college really prepared me, my own personal journey of healing, understanding myself, and it prepared me for the work that I was going to do afterwards. After college, I ended up working in a nonprofit organization that had residential homes for young girls and unwed mothers. I worked specifically in a home I think that girls were 18 to 29, and I started fresh out of college. I was 23 at the time, working with girls with life controlling issues, eating disorders, codependency issues, chemical dependency, everything. Girls that would cut on themselves, all of that. But you can hear that and feel like, wow, that's a lot. But these girls they were just like me, they had similar stories just like me. So I learned very quickly to learn how to love on people and walk and do life with people and understand, it was like I was talking to myself a lot of times with, the individuals that I worked with. So that was fantastic there. So that was an after college life. That's how I got started with my journey in helping people.
It sounds like you were thrown right into the fire. Right into the fire you went. Yeah.
You described it perfectly, because seriously, that training was like fire. Like I went into it like, right away. When you are in the home, wasn't that many residents in it. There was about 20. I started out, my role was a house manager. So I would take them to their doctor's appointments. I had to make sure we had a cleaning schedule every day, cooking schedule. I was the one who assigned the girls to different roles. I had to make sure, like, be mindful of, okay, this girl has issues with cutting, so maybe she shouldn't work in the kitchen, things like that. I would have to give meds, all of that. You just have to pay attention and at the same time love, And so I learned real quickly, like all the defense mechanisms and things that people do.
And it's amazing because when you're 23, like even in today's society, 23-year-olds can't figure it out, and how you were able to help 20 other people just like you. So kudos. That's an awesome beginning, Sandy. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, like those are things that I'm extremely grateful for. It was an opportunity that honestly I didn't even apply for the job. I went on a spring break trip to volunteer to help them. And they expected a team of 6 when I was the team lead for that trip, and they did not have my name. And I went and they're like, wait a minute, I thought it was only 6 of you. And I was the surprise. And I ended up working with the program director that week. And I felt like that was my interview. I didn't know I was interviewing for a job.
Wow. Wow. How exciting. How long were you there for?
I was there for almost 5 years.
5 years. Awesome. Great.
Very full years.
So I want to definitely get back to that a little bit later as we keep moving forward. But what's happened, after, through those 5 years and then beyond that, that kind of moved you in the direction of ultimately coming up with us?
Okay. Well, I had a very full 5 years. You can just even imagine. I ended up, and we'll go back to that later on. I moved from one role to like a counseling role, which is similar to what we do here at EI Solutions. But after that, I really felt like I needed to be with my family. My family had like migrated from Jersey over to Florida. We were now permanently in Florida. And I just felt like I needed to be home. I needed to be there. I really felt like I needed to be connected with community, and I had my church there. And ironically, not really ironically, but during that time, this was back in 2005, our church was doing a creation therapy course, which was part of the certification process to do what we do at EI Solutions, learning about the temperament. I had my aunt, who is Justin McNeil, who's one of our coaches. He is my cousin, and his mom was the one who told me about the course. And I just really felt like, you know what, this is a great next step. And so I moved home, and knowing that I would get that certification, because it's just anything to help people, I was down for. And so I moved here, did that, learned a lot, fell in love with the whole APS system and understanding the temperament in a greater degree. When I moved here, it was a real shift in my life. I kind of went through what I call like silent years. So I went from working in something that was like in my brilliant zone to kind of just finding different work, because that's just what you do as an adult. And so I worked in various different fields, doing what I had to do. But in my heart, my outlet was always at church and continuing with leadership and all of that. So all of the skill set that I learned, in college and through the work that I did carried over. It always carries over. And I met my husband a couple years later after moving to Florida. Thank God for that. We were both kind of later in our years, to get married. And then my husband and I love my husband. He's so awesome. God gifted to me. We struggled with some infertility issues. And so that was a big struggle for us, even within our marriage. And thankfully, 4 years ago, through, fertility specialists, we were able to conceive and have our miracle baby, Jenna. So that's been good. So transitioning to motherhood and again, doing whatever you needed to do. Always within my heart, I wanted to help people. So it was never strange for me. My outlet was always either writing on a blog or being involved in church. And then during the pandemic, which was crazy for all of us, it shifted our lives, right? I went through my period of like feeling everything, eating my emotions, and I needed to snap out of stuff. And so I started implementing some things. And so by the summer, I would say, I just really felt led, like, I need to encourage some folks. Like, I just needed to do something positive. So I just got on social media, on Instagram, and I started posting videos. I was just being transparent about my life. I became real passionate about soul care, like just taking care of our mind, our will, the choices that we make, our emotions, because we have to be responsible and cultivate that part of our life. And especially in the pandemic, especially in the pandemic, that was huge. So I just started posting videos there. And I think that's how we even got connected, Bill. It was through those videos. My cousin was a part of the EI Solutions team, and he just kept feeling like, man, this is such a good fit for Sandy. This is such a good fit for Sandy. And I'm just doing these videos, like, just to be an encouragement. So it was just such a full circle moment when he told me about what we do at EI Solutions. And it was exactly everything that I got trained for. I'm telling you, those full circle moments are incredible. They will completely rock your world. So it's such an honor to be a part of this team. It really is.
So great to have you, Sandy. It's a real pleasure. And it's strange too, because all these things happen in our lives and we don't understand them. And then all of a sudden, years later, it's like, oh, wow. Yeah, this was good. This was all part of the plan that we didn't even realize was part of the plan for all that happened for you. So awesome.
Yeah. And it's tricky, to learn how to live life well when maybe your circumstances don't favor you. Last year didn't favor all of us, and I think there comes a point in life where, we do have to make healthy choices and invest in ourselves first. And that's what it was. It wasn't that let me put on a show and let me just put out a nice message. It was, I had to do some work within myself first. Wow. And then, I was ready to help other folks. It's like giving yourself the oxygen before you give it to other people, that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it takes, I think in the EIS world, in our culture and our ethos of how we help people, I think it's definitely multifaceted in terms of the content of the process, in terms of the fact that we also work in leadership development and business. We're not, just ministering in a church, or we're not just like I said earlier, just a counseling entity that just kind of helps people fix problems. Right. It's really about development of the whole person. And, so when we were in there, we're still always recruiting, but when we got Justin and Amanda, it was just like, yes, this is like the epitome of the type person that we want. So when you came along, it was like, well, I can't wait to talk to her. And of course, like right away, I could see that, you were a perfect fit. And then we kind of brushed you up on your temperament training, going through that and how we present it and all of that, because it is such a key element and a foundational piece to what we're doing. But again, you're just such a perfect fit for this. And I love that full circle as well. Like you mentioned that I mean, even all the bad stuff that we do and the failures that we encounter and mess up in and what seem to be detours in our journey,
Mhm.
they're always redeemed and brought back.
Exactly.
I tell people all the time, I mean, the plaques that like Anita's outdoing everybody except for maybe Damali with the plaques on the wall behind her,
Hey,
I mean,
wait. That's
I have
mine
some
and
of that. Don't
Pepe.
you see
That's
mine?
mine and Pepe, not just me.
yeah, all I have is a green screen behind me, so it doesn't count. But I mean, I've always said is that, the plaques on the wall are for the people who are sitting in the chair watching, it's talking to us to give them confidence that, we did go somewhere to learn something, that we can help them. But really, most of the goods that we bring to the table is our own life experiences and how we have had to walk through a process ourselves, a multifaceted process, and life experiences and failures and victories and all that. In my case, certainly my failed marriage, and Anita as well, and then so many different things that have happened to us. And then next thing you know, a door opens up. God opens a door for us to get involved in something like this. And again, we're just like everybody else. It's just that we have the training to be able to translate that into people's lives and walk with people through a process that can really help them experience what I think is transformational, dramatic life change in most of the cases that people that we're working with.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. And I also think that, when we walk through the fire, like I was saying before about Sandy, that passion rises up in us. Like when I hear, when I'm talking with my clients and I hear what they're walking through, a passion just rises up in me because I say, hey, I did it. You can do it, and the process, the book is just phenomenal and the whole process itself is just phenomenal. But to be able to use those steps and systematically be able to walk them out of it. I wish that book was around 30 years ago when I started, because it is really transformational. So.
Well, you had me around anyway.
That's true. I'm not sure how helpful that was sometimes. But we'll talk later, Bill.
I don't think you liked me too much back in those days, though.
No, I did. I liked you.
What you made me think about, Anita, was, I think there comes a point in life, and hopefully this makes sense when I say it like this. I feel like growing up, it was like my story owned me, and it was the way I was interpreting the story, the shame,
Wow.
it owned me,
Wow.
and then there came a point where I didn't realize, like, I can own my story. I can own it and use it for my good. I can, it's like turning around that shame and being empowered. There's so many lies that we pick up as kids, especially if things have been done to us or we've been wronged, and our will has been, abuse of power. I mean, that causes you to be confused as far as what kind of power do I have, So when you recognize, like, you have a will, you can make your own choices, you can own your story, that is a very powerful moment. It's not an overnight change, but those nuggets that you learn along the way, it's everything. Everything. Yeah.
It's everything. Yeah. I love that, Sandy. I love that because it's so true. And you just move on to help other people and empower them through our stories. And my prayer is that the ones that we minister to today through this process will then go on and bring it into their next generations. That's the thing I tell them all the time. Like, this is a chance and an opportunity for you to turn the whole boat around that you've been given in life. Turn it around, and now you can walk out. And I'm a living testimony, and all of us are. So, great story. Yeah.
So Sandy, since you've been with us, and then after this, maybe we can kind of circle back around to your experience in the program.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I think the experiences like that, I worked also in with New York City Relief. We placed people in programs perpetually like that, from the streets in New York and from anywhere, from Elizabeth, New Jersey, and everybody that we worked with. So we had a lot to do with the inner workings of different programs, making connections, going and speaking and sharing and walking, staying connected with people that we did place in programs like that. And, even helping them when they got out, watching them succeed, get married, have a life after that, and so on and so forth. So I definitely want to go back into that and that aspect of things. and kind of connect the dots between, you know, that type of work and what you're doing now. So do you see that translating out into what you're doing now with the people that you're working with, and how?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. Okay. So, I can best summarize the lessons that I learned, because what I learned in those 5 years, they stay with you. Like those lessons, they just do. So, I would say whenever, to simplify things, when the human heart, all of us have a heart, right? If it's bruised, if it's wounded, we all respond in certain ways. Some of us cover up, and pretend, like we don't want to show our pain to other people. Some people perform extra, overcompensate. I had a certain measure of that. If I show I'm successful, then nobody's going to know the real me, the hurt me, the flawed me, so there's different things. So I think foundationally, when we don't deal with what's happened to us, what's impacted our lives, I think there's three different areas that can come up. There are definitely unmet needs. So when, whatever we do here is, at Solutions, is based on understanding your God-given temperament, right? And those temperaments have needs. They're your own unique set of needs. And if you've had things that have impacted your life and you had a huge unmet need, whether it was caused by the hands of people that you trust, that's a big deal. There's a deficit there. There is something that naturally we're going to try to overcompensate for that deficit. Okay. So we have that. So there's unmet needs. There are unhealed hurts. Clearly, we all have wounds. None of us, doesn't matter if you grew up, in a fabulous family environment, because we live in a fallen world, we all have measures of hurts, disappointments, all of that. So unhealed hurts. And then sometimes there's unresolved issues. And I think it's kind of a combination of the two things. Maybe we have a certain measure of freedom or maturity, or like I said, maybe we have certain people that have spoken into our life, have called things out to our attention, but yet there's still something that's lingering, which can happen to all of us, just when you think like you dealt with something, you have an event happen and it just triggers something in you. It triggers a response that you don't realize, or it catches you off guard, and you don't respond nice, or something ugly comes out of you. That's something unresolved. And it could be, again, an unhealed hurt or an unmet need in your life, so there's that. So I would say that's a really good understanding. I think most of the people that do come through EI Solutions kind of knows a little bit of what they're dealing with. But what I learned out of this ministry, that I worked with, this organization, was kind of how to put a handle on the patterns, the unhealthy patterns that happen in life. So I always like to be like super practical. So I just, I'm just putting out my hand, like 5 different points. So 5 different unhealthy patterns that affect us: shame, fear, control. Those 3 are always in a cycle: shame, fear, control. I'll name the other 2: pride or self-sufficiency, and deception. So I'll explain a little bit more about that. Shame and guilt are 2 different things. Guilty is like, okay, I did something wrong. You feel bad about it. Shame is, I am something wrong. I'm different. I'm broken. I'm flawed, or my family's messed up. Sometimes it's not directed to us. It's directed to whoever's in our proximity. Or we feel shameful of that. Like, I don't want people to know that there's drama in my house, things like that. So what do? When we're shameful, we're scared. So that fear steps in. So we all have different ways of responding with fear. So some of us, again, we cover up and perform, which is what I did. That was my way to take control. Okay. And what happens is we, that pride, which for me was, self-sufficiency, or I think I know best. Like, nobody knows me, so I'm going to do what is best for me. I'm going to watch out for number 1. And that's where pride can come in. And then ultimately, the last one, which we don't see in ourselves, is we end up deceiving ourselves. We end up deceiving ourselves and we think everything's fine. Like, all of this stuff is fine. I can function in life. I'm doing okay. I'm being promoted. All these good things are happening. But meanwhile, just like that foundation that I talked about in our heart, we've got these 3 different areas that we've got to deal with. But if we recognize and pay attention to our life and start owning up to areas of shame, fear, and control, because those three right there, if you can catch yourself, I think pride becomes easier to deal with. And of course, you're not going to be living in too much deception because you're owning up to those three things. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So I just think of that like there are 5 points, but that they can do one of two things. Those 5 things can grip your life and control you
Mhm.
and keep you real bound up and stuck, or you can grab those 5 things, own up to those things in your life, unpack those issues with someone, deal with them appropriately, and take ownership of your life and start taking ownership of your story.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings over the years has been the nature of deception is you don't know you're deceived. So
Right.
deception is very deceptive and more deceptive than we think because it's not something that you have a handle on. And it's going to affect every one of these areas because if you're deceived in one area, it's going to have a connection, to another area, whether it's a coping mechanism or survival skill that's related to something that's broken from my past. And I think everything's fine. Like you said, I might be succeeding outwardly, in a job or something, which seems to cover up, that brokenness, and we're fooled by that. But what I want to connect the dots a little bit too is, I'm thinking back to all the work that I did in programs over the years. And I think distinctly there's 2 different types of people that we're working with. In our realm now, a lot of people in business, a lot of younger people that are hungry for change. They're not satisfied with their lives and, working at Burger King and just kind of bumping along. Now they do have a vision. They're seeking stuff out, and we're a part of that. Yet we talked about that earlier, where they feel like they may have missed the mark already at 25, and hopelessness does get in there and things like that. But I totally remember quite well, in those environments, many times these people are broken down well beyond what most people even understand.
Yes.
Like the crowd that we're working with now largely wouldn't even know how to relate to the brokenness that, when somebody winds up in a residential program, I'll just say it that way.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing when they do, because they have an opportunity to redeem everything, but they're usually broken in a million different ways, whether it's drugs or alcohol or depression or a combination of all of these things, all kinds of abuses, dysfunctional relationships, failed relationships, rejection, being kicked out of their homes, you name it. I mean, these programs are just wrought with so many, broken people. Now by the same token, everybody's broken.
Yes.
Everybody's broken and everybody's subject to these points that you brought out.
Absolutely.
But, talk a little bit about how that equipped you, I guess, in, being able to do what you're doing now and working in that, because 5 years in that environment's a long time.
Yes. It's almost like kind of working in an ER, you get in a certain mode. I think all those medical professionals come with different emergency situations. And so I had to remember in my time off, when I would clock out, which is kind of hard to clock out of a job like that because you end up caring for what you do. And the people that you work with, I mean, they're on your mind. They end up in your prayers. You think of things. There's some that you struggle with. Just personality wise, or one of the issues, which is natural and makes sense. Some people that do go through a program like that, they already have trust issues with authority. So you have to sometimes it was like mental Olympics with some folks, but kind of how it prepared me. I think part of it is also my own temperament. I just tried to stay as positive as possible, realistic. I used humor sometimes to connect with folks because humor, I like using humor, and that's the phlegmatic in me. So
I was going to say that's the phlegmatic in you.
Hey, tell everybody what your temperament is.
Yeah, what is it?
All right, time to really get to know Sandy. Okay, so in inclusion, which is I'll get all formal with everyone, socialization with folks. I am phlegmatic sanguine. So
Oh.
I appear very laid back, but as you get to know me, I light up, you know?
Okay.
And in control, I am phlegmatic, melancholy. So that's that critical part of me, that part. And then in affection, I'm phlegmatic. So naps are life for me, you know, like I love naps. Anyways, so that's me. But humor's always been a part of my life. I think my family's sarcastic to begin with. So sometimes when things are heavy, it's like, okay, let's lighten I already know you're going through, you know, hell. You know, it's like, let's just, you know, like today's a new day, you know, lighten up. And a lot of times, like I would just really get along with a lot of the residents, because it's like sometimes you do have to take a little bit of a mental break from, like, a vacation from your problems. I always love that movie, What About Bob?
I love that
Some
movie.
personality types, you just got to take a vacation from your problems, because that's their identity, drama. They're just drama all the time. They create drama, they like drama, they stir drama. And sometimes it was like, time out. No, there were some weekends whenever I worked a weekend at this home, I always kind of had like a come to Jesus moment with the girls. It's like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to have fun. You know, I always just try to put a positive spin. And it's to show people like, hey, I know you're going through a lot of things emotionally, but you do have power to set the tone in your life. And, it's just kind of like the balance of health. But as far as how it prepared me, so I started in a house manager role, and then I moved into being part of the counseling team. So I started out doing group counseling, which was fantastic. We would just cover certain books. So one of the perks that I had that still stays with me is, like, I know of so many good resources to help people with life controlling issues. And so we would go over a book, like I think of Henry Cloud and John Townsend. We had a lot of their material. We did group counseling using, like, Safe People was one of them, boundaries and dating, all of that, and just to have open conversations with people. So I loved those group counseling sessions. And then I was asked to be part of the counseling team. And so the model that was used to walk people through, because these residents would be there anywhere between, it just depends on what their issues were and how deep seated it was. They would be anywhere from, I think the least amount of time was 6 months, and up to like maybe more than a year. But again, that's like a case by case basis, depending on how safe their environments were back home, and also the life skills, like if they were ready to leave and proceed. So that was really cool. But we walked through, literally, it matches almost identical to what we go through with the process, except we did not do the temperament. Whenever I finished working with that ministry and I focused on becoming licensed in the temperaments, I was like, where was this? I thought of so many girls. I'm like, where was this when I was working with this individual? Because this would have helped me to know how to approach them. I do believe that when you understand your temperament, that, especially because Bill talks about this all the time, like, control is literally the control panel of your life. It's where your defense mechanisms, they come out. So the only difference I see between the experience I had with the girls in the home and EI Solutions, the only difference is they were in a home, they were not allowed to leave, and that's all they focused on, was on their healing and self-development. Like, that's the only difference. And of course the temperament factor, which is like huge. If people really understood that how much of a gift understanding your temperament is, it really can change your life. It's a great guidepost. It lets you know how much you can do. It keeps you from burnout. It's a gift. So that's the only difference I see, so with EI Solutions, there's more freedom. You can do it at your own pace, or you can do the work and pursue and work hard and just reap the benefits from it, which I want to encourage more people to be consistent, in working on yourself, because it's not a race. I don't want to imply that, but it's just this intentionality. And we all know, what we focus on is what we give power to in our lives. And it's important to focus on healing when it's time to heal. That's where I'm a little biased from working in such a concentrated environment like that to hear. But, there's different environments for that.
I always equate that, like, if you're going to go to the gym, and work out. So
Exactly.
the gym is packed on January 1st. By February 1st, there's just a few people, but by the end of the season, those few that stuck to it and go week after week and work on their stuff, they're the ones that benefit the most, because then they come out being changed. I mean, physically changed and healthier, but when you go through the process and you get those aha moments when you're working with us counselors and through your journaling, you get those aha moments that can then change the course of your life. So
Absolutely.
It's really important. I agree with you, Sandy.
Yeah, and everyone's in a different timetable. Like, I'm not here to condemn folks either. Everyone's in a different place. So some people, some temperaments, like, it's not until there's a fire crisis that they're like, yeah, maybe I should work on myself, or maybe I should address this issue. And then there's some people that they don't want to let life get too overwhelming because it's literally controlling their life right now. So
That's such a great point, Sandy. Let's talk about that for a minute, because I mean, a lot of the work that we're doing, if people were to choose to get involved in the process preemptively or proactively, right?
Right.
And that's where I like the leadership development aspect of things, because you don't wait for, well, hopefully you don't wait for problems in your leadership models to break before you start going and get some help. Hopefully you pay attention to some of that stuff earlier on. But I think in any level that we're working with people, that if we could plant that seed that, don't wait for something to break before you fix it. Like, everybody's broken. And I think these areas you mentioned the 5 areas of, like, shame, fear, control, pride, and deception, those areas will definitely keep us from seeing this reality that we really are all broken, and that our brokenness is not something to be ashamed of, or that it needs to be hidden. I remember one event, this is when we were before the pandemic, and I think it was my last live event that I did in Long Island. We had 2 events that weekend. It was the main event. This is what I'm talking about now. And there's probably a couple of thousand people there, right? So I just really felt it in my heart. Like, I just wanted to see how many people would respond to this. And I said, everybody who has ever felt disqualified coming to these meetings, stand up, And so about half of the people stood up, and I said, now the rest of you that are lying, I'm going to give you an opportunity to stand up. And pretty much the rest of the room stood up, because everybody feels disqualified, intimidated. If somebody's got it better than they do, they're deficient in some way, and it's rooted somewhere. It's rooted somewhere, and we want to help people to, because I started off by sharing what's EIS about. It's really about helping a person to know their why, to know their purpose, to discover their gifts, their talents, their strengths, and their weaknesses, which temperament, as you mentioned, has a lot to do with just on that level alone. But to help you in every area of your life and just become the genuine you, which, we have calling, we have why, we have passions, we have all of these things that we want to help people to develop. So it's so much more than just fixing a problem and then kind of having this mentality that, well, if I just fix this problem, then I'll be okay and I can just move on from there. It's really about changing the way that you perceive life and engage with it, right?
Yes, absolutely. You can't shame your way to change. I think there comes a point like, okay, we learned a lesson. We have our aha moment. We all learned something. We all gained something. We can sit through, an event like this and get a point that can really make our day, or put something in perspective for us. And then the next day the same things trip us up. So we can't shame our way to change, I think, but we do have to be honest, and honesty requires that we tell ourselves the truth, that if we're not doing well. One way for me, I noticed probably once I'm a little bit older, I'm obviously not, the 23-year-old that started all of this, but there comes a point like when you start observing a holding pattern in your life, where you're not progressing. It's frustrating. Anita mentioned January 1st, it's like every January 1st you come around, it's like, what did I accomplish this year? Or man, this year wiped me out, or whatever. I think we do have to address and be honest about those holding patterns. One of the things that I recognize, I think as a couple of years ago, or even with 2020, that fear was it for me. Fear was a big, huge holding pattern because it became a filter for everything. It was, if I wanted to pursue something, then all these thoughts, like limiting beliefs, like, well, if you do that, you don't want to open up that can of worms. It's like all these what ifs, and then you notice that you're just still in the same position. So it's like, there's this phrase, like, if you want to do something you've never done before, or be somewhere you've never been before, you've got to do some things you've never done before. So you do have to take action, and it's going to be different. The very first video that I put up last year was this compliment that somebody gave me, which I didn't even see it as a positive attribute in myself. But somebody said, like, you're like a salmon. You swim upstream. Because salmon, like, they go against the
tide.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah.
They go against the water, the current, And especially with 2020 last year, there's so many things, so much drama, so much hurt, so many emotions. In order to change, you do have to go against all the things that make you feel uncomfortable. That's the only way we get to change, and get out of our holding patterns.
Well, and I always tell people too is that, you're never really standing still. You're either going forward or you're going backwards.
Right.
We can think that we're just standing still or we're stuck. But if we're stuck, there's stuff in our lives that's not being addressed.
Yeah.
Cycles, as you mentioned earlier, that on some level or multiple levels that are going backwards and keeping us going in a backwards motion, which creates ultimately over time, hopelessness and despair.
Yeah.
And that's where this feeling, like even at 24, 25, 26 years old, we can feel like, man, I feel like I've blown every chance that I have. Like I've done everything, which couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, 3 people sitting here right now that are living proof of the redemption that can happen in a life. As I mentioned earlier, as we were chatting earlier, 45 years ago, I was a drunken bartender right here in San Clemente, and I'm in full circle redemption mode every day that I get up. I marvel at the fact that here I am living the life that I'm living here and doing what I'm doing now. And that part of my life is an integral part of who I am today and how I can help people. So, and I felt hopeless and despaired until I was 30 years old. I thought there was no hope for me, that I would never get out of that, And so what we were doing really is, as the old joke goes, is we were working on our testimonies.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
I think
right.
I'm sorry, Anita. I think of that phrase, don't waste your pain. We've all made mistakes. I think whenever we have our aha moment, our rock bottom, whatever it is, we all have our moments where we realize something needs to change. Then definitely, it's kind of like when you start working out, you don't want to ruin the work that you're putting in, So don't waste the pain. Yes, you've gone through a lot of things, or maybe you're in a season of a setback, but every part of life, and just like what you mentioned, Bill, loving every version of yourself, loving every version, even in this current season, if it doesn't favor you, or, sometimes it's financial stuff, and then the financial stuff causes you to feel shameful about yourself. And, it's like, we all have something that we're struggling with, all of us. Let's not waste that. Let's not beat ourselves up. And, sometimes, honestly, it's as simple as I need to talk to somebody about what I'm feeling.
Yeah. And the bottom line is that really speaks to what I've seen over and over again with everybody is it's a value situation, that I feel less valuable.
Right.
I can't see, like you said, that deception blinds us. Like we can't see what could happen, we're not God. We can't see what God's doing, what he has in store, and we can connect to that and we can move forward in it. But if you're blind and you've been beat down and you have all these aspects that are working in the negative towards you, the whole idea is that, that, like I said before, that deception is you don't even know you're deceived. So it just feels like, I'm a failure. It just feels like I can't do this, and why can't I do it is because obviously the other people that are around me are more valuable than me. They're more talented than me. And then we compare ourselves.
Absolutely.
And in old program language, I'm sure you know this, the old adage is identify, don't compare.
Yeah.
You know, when you identify with other people,
Yeah.
whether it's good, bad, or indifferent,
Mhm.
you look for the parts that you can identify with. And then you can latch onto the parts that other people have latched onto that have moved them forward instead of condemning yourself to, like, you know, I compare myself, well, oh, see, they're talking about it and they've already done that, you know,
Mhm.
and they have careers and they have jobs and everything else. Like,
Mhm.
look where we came from.
Yeah.
You know, look at that. You know, see the dysfunction. Like, everybody came one way or another from a broken place. I don't care how successful people are.
Yeah.
You know, it's very rare that you find people that came up in a perfect family, in a perfect household with a perfect upbringing and everything just went well. And even if they had lots of money, you know, it's a family with money, it doesn't mean their lives necessarily are as good as they look on the outside. They're very deceiving when we look at those things, of course.
Mhm.
So again, you know, the work that we're doing and helping people with is for them to discover who they are, you know, their value, you know, what are they bringing to the table? Who are they? That they're valid, their lives are valid, you know, and they have gifts and talents, and just their presence is so important to the
Mhm.
community around them. And that's one of the things that I miss too about doing the live events, is we
Mhm.
were really cultivating a community at the live events, teaching events particularly, you know, where people are just hungry for this stuff. And people were saying things like, you know what, I'm finding it easier to share my stuff with people that are around me now. Like, I don't feel so closed in,
Mhm.
or I don't feel so threatened by everybody else that's around me now, because that exposure just, you know, starts to open us up,
Yeah.
you know, kind of like a flower, so that we can kind of begin to bloom.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And the temperament just is the perfect key to do that. It's the perfect segue into being able to do that, because you're exposing exactly how you are, how you were made, and
Mhm.
you're seeing all of your strengths. So it is a
Absolutely.
good way to start.
Yeah, there's everybody's got a gift to display to the world. Once we get healed, you know, that's something that we do naturally do that. But a thought that comes to mind, I think of these contests, you know, some of these contests have rules that in order to win, you have to be present. And I think that's what it is in life.
Oh,
We
that's a
can't
great
hide,
point.
you know, like we've got to be present in order to win, and present with our pain, present, you know, like just there, show up, love yourself, even if you feel ugly, even if you feel messed up. In order to win, you got to be present. And I think that's to kind of tie in what you were saying about, you know, the being proactive in your pursuit of healing.
Yeah.
It's like that's the best way that I can say, encourage someone. If you want to win in life, you know, and win, we don't mean material things and accolades and all of that. I mean like fulfilled, healing, whole, life-giving to other people, doing what you're supposed to be doing. You have to be present, fully honest.
We have time for maybe one or two questions. If anybody wants to throw them up, let's go ahead and put them there now. If not, we're going to have to ask them. So don't make us ask
No pressure.
No pressure.
them. Yeah, while we're waiting, maybe there'll be one or two questions that pop up. If not, that's okay. But just letting everybody know, like right now, that we're not going to be here next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I'm going away for a much needed little time out up a little bit north of here in Santa Barbara. So we're looking forward to getting away for my wife's birthday. So we're excited about that.
Excellent.
I was going to put Anita in charge, but you know.
I'm glad you didn't, Bill.
You're done well.
And then after I do this, we'll kind of we'll cap it off. So just want to remind everybody from last week's show. I always do this backwards here. There we go.
That's good.
From Jesse Barnett, Soul Crushers, great book. Really addresses a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today. You know, the barriers that keep us from moving forward and the things that trip us up so easily in life. You know, and it might be a good segue or something to help you segue into getting help with the IS, is to kind of understanding like, wow, these things, yeah, they are real in my life. These are barriers in my life. I am stuck in these areas. And then maybe at the end, Sandy, what we can do is just kind of recapitulate those 5 points as we close out. But I will also mention the process, as Anita always kind of promotes my book for me.
Love it.
Excellent.
It's really great to outline the process. It has questions at the end of each chapter that I think are really helpful, especially for couples. But if you're an individual, it's helpful too. And I am working on the second book, which is a guided devotional and journal that incorporates all three areas of journaling: classic journaling, which is my everyday journaling; the archaeological journaling, which we employ in the process itself to help dig out that those areas of brokenness and trauma in our lives; and then in the forward journaling aspect of learning how to move forward with affirmation and with a plan on a daily and weekly basis, so that we can keep the process always moving forward. Again, if we're not moving forward, we're really moving backward. We're never just standing still. So we want to equip everybody as much as we can. And I'm hoping that both of you will write a book one of these days, because
Yeah,
as many books as we get our hands on,
yeah, I'd love to.
to really help people to engage,
Mhm.
Yep.
So kind of closing out, Sandy, let's I think this is so important, those 5 areas that you brought up. I think those could be red flags for folks who are watching, that will watch the broadcast later on,
Mhm.
to think about these things.
Yes.
And how are these areas affecting my life? So let's just go over those, okay?
Sure. So so these 5 things, these 5 patterns, I like to call them patterns because they're patterns of behavior that become cycles, and then those cycles entrap us. So these things can grab a hold of us and keep us in a holding pattern, or we can address each one and, get free, and own our story, own our life. So the first area is shame. Shame is looking at yourself. It's the part of you that feels different, that feels, like you're flawed, like you're not good enough, you don't have the goods, all of that. That can affect you, or you're shameful about your background. You're shameful of there's so many different areas. I had shame because I felt like nobody understood who I was, because I was raised in 2 different cultures, and where do I identify with? So there's many different areas that we can feel shameful. As a result of that shame, guess what? We're scared. We don't want people to know how bad we really are, or how ugly we really are, or how unlovable, or I'm broken goods. So with that fear, what we do, some people fill up, they become dependent on food, sex, drugs, whatever, or performance, working really hard to overcompensate where they feel like they fall short. So there's that fear. That fear drives you to take control of your life in some way, or find an outlet to control your life. And so with that, what ends up happening is the 4th area is pride. We become self-reliant, because whether we have trust issues, people have let us down, I can only trust myself, or we think we know best, and we become self-sufficient. Okay. So that alone, if we become self-sufficient and we don't let anyone into our space, okay, what can happen is we can easily become deceived. We have blinders on our eyes. We don't recognize how our choices and our behaviors causes these ripple effects that either hold you bound, or it negatively impacts the relationships that you're in. So it's addressing each one that we loosen the grip of unhealthy patterns in our life.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, I just encourage, thank you so much, Sandy and Anita. This was really, really
Thank
great
you.
today.
Thank you so much, Bill. And it's so great getting to know you, Sandy.
Oh,
I
likewise.
enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
And you can log on to eisolutions.co, and you can see Sandy and you can see Anita there, and you can select either one of them if you want to get involved in this process one way or the other. And hope you do that. And we're going to be back in 2 weeks with another special guest. It's a secret, not telling anybody. That way you hang and you'll come back and you're like, who's on there next week? So, but I'll see you in 2 weeks. And so love you guys so much. Thank you so much.
Take care, Bill. Love you too. Bye, Sandy. Take care.
Bye.